Okay.
Prior to tonight's meeting, we'll have an invocation offered by Commissioner Murray, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear wise and loving Father, first let me say thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here this evening. Thank you for your many and abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself, for the measure of health we need to fulfill our callings, for sustenance, and for friendship. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. Thanks as well for the freedom to embrace you or the freedom to reject you. Thank you for loving us even so from a boundless and gracious nature. In the scriptures, you have said that citizens ought to obey the governing authorities since you have established those very authorities to promote peace and order and justice. Therefore, I pray that our commissioners, the various levels of city officials, and in particular for this assembled commission, I'm asking that you graciously grant them and all of us the wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interest in the issues of our times. It has always been that way, and it always will be, and we ask for your assistance in that regard. I pray that you would grant us a sense of welfare and understanding of the true needs of our citizens, and that you grant us a keen thirst for justice and righteousness, as that is your will. I ask that you grant us confidence in what is good and fitting, as well as the ability to work together in harmony, even where there is honest disagreement. And I ask that for personal peace in our lives and the lives of all of our staff and those we are working with, and the joy in the work that we undertake. I pray for the agenda set before us today and for us over the balance of the year in its varied and trying ways. Please give an assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work in and around our beloved city of Sandusky. In this most blessed name, I pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Spriggs, will you call the roll?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Poole.
Present.
Mr. Murray.
Here.
Mr. Brady.
Here.
Ms. Twine.
Here.
Mr. Meinzer.
Here.
Mr. Wadding.
Here.
Commissioners, may I have a motion to excuse Commissioner Harris from tonight's meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Without objection, motion be approved, and hearing no objection, that motion is approved. Commissioners, you have before you the minutes from our meeting of July 27th and August 3rd. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Wadding.
I move that we accept the minutes from the July 27th meeting and also the special meeting of August 3rd and dispense with the formal reading.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved, and hearing no objection, that motion is approved. Once again, we are holding this Sandusky City Commission meeting electronically. Commissioners and staff are in attendance through an internet hookup in a variety of safe locations. We've asked our audience to either submit their questions or their comments in writing to our commission clerk, and we will answer those that pertain to legislation as that legislation comes before us, as well as provide a response to any other audience questions from the appropriate staff. Also like to acknowledge the fact that those participating in this meeting are doing so with the appropriate social distancing and face masks. Ms. Spriggs, are there any questions from the public that pertain to tonight's agenda?
Yes, Mr. President. We have one item to read. It is from Ms. Sharon Johnson at 1139 5th Street. In regards to consent, item A, she asked me to read the following. Mr. Justin Harris's consulting contract as city attorney. Mr. Harris signs his title with his law firm as shareholder. What exactly does that mean? Mr. Harris and his firm represent Cedar Point. Mr. Harris is a board member of Whiteman Weber, a nonprofit. Mr. Harris is a professor at BGSU. All three of the mentioned entities have done business with the city. How does the city expect to handle these situations when they come before Mr. Harris for contract and a possible conflict of interest with Mr. Harris? And then in regards to consent item C, she said, as a point of information, Commissioner Murray's sister is a board member of the Erie Metro Park.
Those questions will be addressed as we get to that legislation post haste. Commissioners, you have before you several communications from staff recommending various legislation. Can I have a motion to accept these communications?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved. Hearing no objection, that motion is approved. Commissioners, we have 3 consent agenda items to consider this evening. Do any of the commission wish to move these items to the regular agenda?
Mr. Chair, yeah, I just want to know how we're going to,
Commissioner Poole.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, how we're going to address the questions if we don't pull them down. We can deal with it
Yeah,
as is.
we can always comment on the legislation, and I will turn to Mr. Harris for that and Mr. Murray at the end.
Okay.
Ms. Briggs, will you present the consent agenda items?
Yes, Mr. President. Garrett. Consent item A is an agreement with Reminger Company LPA for professional services. Item B is an agreement with ODNR to accept $4 million for construction of Cedar Point Causeway Wetlands Project Phase 1. And item C is 2 easement agreements between the City of Sandusky and the Erie Metro Parks regarding the landing park.
Having heard these ordinances, Commissioners, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Twine.
I move to accept the consent agenda items A, B, and C, and declaring that all ordinances as drafted and presented to the City Commission under the consent agenda shall take effect in accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Mr. Harris, I wonder if you'd be so kind to share with us, or who would be the appropriate person to share with us? I believe it would be Mr. Harris, our interim law director, to speak to the question asked by Mrs. Johnson regarding potential conflicts of interest. I think I know the answer, but I'm going to let you as the law director lead me in that discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Commission President. To answer Ms. Johnson's question, it's not uncommon for law firms to serve as law directors or interim law directors for municipalities. Myself, Commissioner Murray is an attorney. We have a heightened ethical obligation by virtue of our bar license that requires us to basically practice in accordance with our Ohio rules of professional responsibility and to avoid conflicts. With respect to my representation of Cedar Fair, I represent them traditionally in a general liability standpoint, meaning I represent them when they get sued for slip and falls. People have issues with employment claims against them. With respect to actual contractual work, I've not done any business or contractual work on behalf of Cedar Fair. That's done by Duff Noki and another lawyer who the city's familiar with by the name of Majid. So what we have is barriers or walls that are set up in terms of what I know of Cedar Fair and whatnot. With respect to my previous, I guess, job as an adjunct professor, I think Ms. Johnson read my firm profile. I did serve as an adjunct professor at Firelands College, but I haven't done so in 3 years. So to the extent the city has any contracts or relationship or business arrangements with Firelands College, I don't think that will be a conflict. But more importantly, if there is a conflict, what will happen is I would either get a conflict waiver from Cedar Point and the city indicating that I can represent both parties, and or I will recuse myself of that particular item. We talked about it when the potential of me coming on board to take over in the short term for Trevor of any potential or outstanding items that city dealings that they have with Cedar Fair and or BJSU Firelands, and I don't see any on the horizon. I would be happy to be your guys' long-term fix, but I think right now the goal was to get a lawyer here for you guys in the short term. What business the city has with Cedar Fair 2 or 3 months down the road, I don't know if I'll even be here at that time, but I'll leave that up to the commission and Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. I think your position is much the same as all of ours are. There are times occasionally when people sitting on this commission recuse themselves for a variety of good reasons, and when those conflicts come along, I think we'll see them for what they are, and we and you will recuse themselves if they truly are a conflict. Mr. Murray, you were included in that question from Ms. Johnson also. Would you like to respond to you having a relative that serves on the Erie Metro Parks Board?
I would, and let me first say there was another part of the question, and that's what the question was: what does it mean for Mr. Harris to be a shareholder of the firm? Whether you're a partner or a shareholder, those both mean the same thing. And just as I'm a partial owner of our firm, I mean that Mr. Harris is a partial owner of his firm. And I do concur with Mr. Harris's answer. It was something that we discussed in advance of the proposal and the acceptance of the proposal that it would serve as the interim law director. So that's entirely accurate. With respect to Margaret serving on the Erie Parks Metro Board, yes, that indeed is so. She is a volunteer. This is a matter that I have not discussed with her. The issue in terms of a conflict of interest is whether there is a direct and specific benefit. There's no benefit to me or to my sister as a result of that. I'm proud of her service there, and happy that she's doing that, but it's not an item that we've discussed, and so I do not believe that poses.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Additional discussion, Commissioners? Ms. Briggs, will you call the roll on the motion, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Now on the ordinances?
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington? Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Those ordinances are passed. I want to take just a moment to extend a thank you to the Erie County Metro Parks for their willingness to donate to us, to the city, that easement that shows up in item C on the consent agenda. Without their cooperation and their agreeing to do that piece of the puzzle would not be possible. So our thanks publicly go out to the Erie Metro Parks folks, their board and their volunteers. Thank you for donating that. We'll turn to our one item on the regular agenda. In my memory of 7 years sitting here, I don't remember ever having an agenda that had one item on it. But so we will get into that ordinance. Ms. Spring, will you present the only item on our agenda?
Yes, item number 1 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into a lease agreement with the United States of America, acting by and through the designated representative of the U.S. Customs and Border Protection for a portion of the Jackson Street Pier property for Homeland Security, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Poole?
just a question. Section 4 of this contract, how are we funding that? All our responsibilities for taking care of the pier? Where's the money come from?
Mr. Klein, are you out there at your desk in a position to answer Mr. Poole's question?
Yes, Mr. President, I can partially answer, but may have to defer to Director Reeder as well. But the intent is to fund through lease payments and other things. There's a Jackson Street Pier account that receives funding on an annual basis. In the past, it would receive from the parking meter that was out there, and it would be populated a little bit on an annual basis. This year, through our lease agreements, through any events, things like that, we're trying to get that fund established, and we would reimburse the building maintenance or any other accounts, or we would at least be taking items and materials out of that fund once it does get established. And I don't know if Director Reeder has anything additional to add.
Through you, Commissioner President, this is Michelle Reeder. I would agree with Aaron's comments that basically we need to look at it this year once we're able to start renting the facilities out to make sure we have enough in the funds to help maintain the pier for the future.
Just one other question, Ms. Reeder. Based on the whatever lease agreements we've had in the past, how did we turn out in terms of money-wise? When do we have to take from the general fund? Is the money we've been generating from anything down there been paying it all, or part of what it costs to maintain the pier?
Through you, Commissioner President, to Commissioner Poole, this is an item that we'll have to work closely with Public Works on their expectations of what is going to be needed in the future for any kind of maintenance items. Obviously, with the pier just being rehabbed, we don't expect any large increases or any large bills for any maintenance items in the near future. Obviously, utilities and things like that, we'll make sure we get absorbed on lease agreements for the future.
Okay, I just recognize that we're picking up the trash and doing all the work where these boats, with Canada, we're responsible for everything with this government lease. Okay, where were we before? Does anyone know? The past lease dealing with the government with Canada, or is this new? New expenses?
Yeah, Mr. President, this
Mr.
is
Klein,
Director Klein.
go ahead.
Okay, through you, Mr. President. In the past, my understanding is we have never had a lease with the federal government for this site. And that was actually something about when I got here about 7 years ago. They started pushing and saying that we need a lease, and we started looking through the process and realizing how expensive it was going to be to do the improvements that they needed and requested for us to do. So because we were never operating under a lease, we would do improvements as they were requested and never really had an obligation or had anything else, although they were pushing pretty hard to get that. So they were very good in allowing us to hold off until the pier could be completed to actually enter into an agreement with them. So technically, we have been responsible for doing the work that they requested. A lot of the materials in the past have come out of our O&M budget for building maintenance, or if there was money available in the Jackson Street Pier account, we would try to draw from that as well. But for the most part, we just held their facility together with Band-Aids as best we could until we could get something that was actually operational and met the federal requirements.
Okay, last, Mr. Chairman, can we expect you to keep records so we can track how we're doing with this contract? What it cost us to have this contract with the government? For example, we pay to empty their trash cans. They're separate from ours. Or how are you looking at that?
Through you, Mr. President, we absolutely expect to do that. And that's the discussions that we've had internally with finance and public works to make sure that we are accounting for every expenditure that we have at that site for the future.
Thank you.
Additional discussion, Commissioners? Ms. Bridge, will you poll the commission on the motion, please?
Mr. Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Brady,
Yes.
Ms. Twine,
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer,
Yes.
Mr. Waddington.
Yes.
Mr. Poole,
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Brady,
Yes.
Ms. Twine,
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer,
Yes.
Mr. Waddington.
Yes.
Mr. Poole.
Yes.
That ordinance is passed. And now that it is passed, I would like to read into the record a communication from the Director of Field Operations of Customs and Border Protection regarding this facility. This is from Robert E. White, Director of Field Operations out of the Chicago Field of Customs and Border Protection. I'm very excited that the City of Sandusky has completed the Jackson Street Pier and Shoreline Drive project, which includes a new Customs and Border Protection facility for our officers to process arriving ferry passengers and vehicles. The completion of this project is an excellent example of the CPB stakeholder engagement process to bring economic growth to local communities. I want to thank all who collaborated on this project. It was the thoughtful and productive interactions between CPB, Chicago Field Office, and Port of Toledo Sandusky, the City of Sandusky, and local community members that contributed to the completion of this project. You all provided a significant and valuable perspective that helps CPB to focus our efforts in areas that promote the exchange of international commerce. I thank you for that interaction. It is so important that we work together with the top decision makers in both industry and in government to ensure that our efforts are robust and productive. The Jackson Street Pier and Shoreline Drive project is a best practice, a model for this kind of engagement. Robert E. White, Director of Field Operations, Chicago Field Office. We thank them also for their contributions. Commissioners, that concludes our regular agenda items. We'll turn to our city manager for his report.
Thank you, Commission President, Commissioners, staff, and audience. I will start with new business with the Police Department. We want to congratulate Officer Chris Rankins, who's retiring from the force after 27 years of service. His last day working at the department will be August 19th. Chris has served in many roles at the agency, to include SRO, Field Training Officer, Firearms Instructor, ALICE Instructor, and Community Impact Officer. Chris is a Sandusky Blue Streak. We wish him well in his retirement, and he will surely be missed. Also, good news that the department was awarded a $15,000 technology grant from the Office of Criminal Justice Services for coronavirus emergency supplemental funding. The submission was approved at the May 11th, 2020 meeting. These funds will be used to purchase various technology, including tablets, cameras, hardware, and software to conduct meetings, interviews, and training to avoid personal contact when appropriate and do so virtually. Moving on to the fire department, we have another retirement, and I believe he is with us tonight. Chief Will Cox has announced he will be retiring on August 21st after 29 years in the fire service. The last 3 was our chief. He started with us in August of 2017. Rick, thank you for your service. We wish you well on your future endeavors. We appreciate everything you've done for the city. Upon Chief Will Cox's retirement, I wanted to announce that Captain Jim Green will begin serving as the interim fire chief. Captain Green has been with Sandusky Fire for 33 years and will serve as interim chief until a new fire chief is hired. I'll be coordinating with Commission President Brady as well as other commissioners as the replacement of the fire chief position does involve the city charter and kicking off that process with the appointment of a search committee. So we'll be back soon with news as to how the commission wants to handle that committee process. Moving on to the finance department. The next finance committee meeting will be Friday, August 21st at 8 a.m. And also we wanted to provide an update to this commission on work that Michelle Reeder, as our finance director, has been leading to update our water and sewer payment and disconnection for delinquency counts. So we'll start with the water disconnection for delinquency accounts. Our current policy is to disconnect service when the account is $100 or more past due. The new policy will be to temporarily increase the threshold to $150 or more past due before discontinuing service. The threshold will be through October 31st, with the idea of in November of 2020 reverting back to discontinuing water service once the account is 100 or more past due. And those changes, I know Commissioner Poole had a question about that, were specifically based on community concerns due to the fact that our water and sewer bills have been going up due to necessary rate increases because of our commitments to the EPA, that $100 payment, plus particularly with the economic circumstances many are facing now that have prevented turnoffs, et cetera, for the last several months due to COVID-19, that this would give people a temporary opportunity to keep our service on while they work through some of those difficulties. As far as payment plans, our current policy is to request half of the past due amount initially and then divide the remaining balance into equal payments over the next 2 weeks. A new policy will allow more flexibility to work with residents who have a larger balance due. The new policy requires less money initially and allows up to 6 months to have the balance paid, depending on the circumstance. The account will only be allowed a payment plan once every 12 months, and all payment plans must be approved by the property owner. Future changes will go into effect next year, include effective January 1st. We will mail bills directly to the property owner as opposed to tenants. Also effective on July 1st, we will assess a 5% monthly penalty for past due payments. And we're also exploring the benefit of mailing a full-size letter bill instead of the current postcard format, which has a few advantages, one of which is an opportunity to provide other messages from the city to our rate-paying customers. Moving on to public works. Each year, water supply systems are required to collect lead and copper samples from the distribution system as required by the EPA. Once again, analytical results at all 30 sampling sites were below the allowable threshold levels, with most being not detectable. We'd like to thank Big Island Waterworks staff and water distribution personnel for continually producing safe, quality drinking water. Also an update, we received only one bid for the JC Park restroom project, which was significantly more than the engineer's estimate. Per Ohio revised code, that bid is required to be rejected. Due to the high bids for the restroom, staff is working with donors to reevaluate the park's priorities with available funds for 2020 and 2021. A recommendation will be made at the City Commission meeting, and we are excited to begin making some improvements to JC Park, which is our priority park for this year and next year as part of our neighborhood parks program going forward. For the planning department, some updates on meetings. The planning commission meeting for August 26th is scheduled for 4:30 p.m. The Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for August 20th also scheduled for 4:30 p.m. The Landmark Commission meeting has been canceled for August, and the Arts and Culture Commission meeting for August 18th has been scheduled for 5:15 p.m. Those meetings will take place remotely. And then finally, Sandusky Recreation, quite a few updates tonight. The Sandusky Rec Department wrapped up the 2020 Summer Park Program and also the Coping Through COVID program at 222 Street. Attendance at the Summer Park program was slow but steady. Almost 80 participants were part of the 4-week Coping Through COVID programs. Sandusky Rec would like to thank Sandusky City Schools for providing lunches through August 7th for both programs, and also the drive-through pickup location at 222 Meg Street. A special thank you to SPD or Sandusky Police for transporting lunches to Foxborough Park throughout the 5-week program. Also, with the completion of the Jackson Street Pier and Mylander Pavilion, the Sandusky Rec staff is excited to add the pavilion to the list of the many shelters, gazebos, and pavilions that are available for rental in hopefully the near future throughout the city. Unfortunately, with the COVID-19 pandemic, all facilities have not been available for rental events with the exception of weddings, funeral wakes, religious activities, and events expressing First Amendment rights. Sandusky Rec has worked closely with the manager's office, planning, and public works to come up with a pricing structure for running the Mylander Pavilion when allowable through the guidelines set by the Ohio Department of Health and the Erie County Health Department. The pavilion will be available for rental in full day and 4-hour minimum increments with discounts for city residents. Rates start at $300 and can reach up to $1,250 for a full day non-resident fee. Security deposits will be required for all reservations. Those interested in reserving the Mylander Pavilion can call the Sandusky Rec Department at 419-627-5886 or can email Recreation Superintendent Jason Werling at jwerling, JWERLING @ci.sandusky.oh.us. And finally, the FLW Tackle Warehouse Pro Series Fishing Tournament will be utilizing the Shelby Street Boat Ramp from Tuesday the 11th through Friday, August 14th. Those looking to put their boat in the water on Tuesday and Wednesday of the tournament advised to use location due to the large field of anglers. The tournament will be utilizing the boat ramp, the Paper District Marina, and Battery Park for the event. The event may need the facilities for additional days depending on weather conditions, and tournament organizers have worked with the city and the county health department to make it a safe event for staff and participants during COVID-19. The public is urged to watch live coverage of the tournament at www.flwfishing.com and not to try to view the tournament in person. Anyone with questions can contact Jason at 419-627-5833 or jwhirling@ci.sandusky.oh.us. That concludes my remarks for this evening. I'm happy to take any questions, and thank you.
Commissioners, questions for the city manager?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Waddington.
maybe this is for Mrs. Reeder, since we're talking about the water policies. On the payment plans for where it says item 1, I got a hard copy in front of me. The hardship COVID-19 pay extension runs during the pandemic or future hardship cases. Down payment minimum of 50, remaining total amount to be split with equal installments not to exceed 3 months. I guess I'm concerned if a senior citizen or there's a lot of people that's displaced from work now, maybe there's going to be situations that we could look at, if they're extreme. I don't want to see somebody's water getting cut off in the wintertime, especially a senior citizen or someone that's unemployed. I wish there was a way, and I know it's tough because we got well over 600, if I remember from what I read from Mrs. Reeder sent out to us, delinquent bills. I like the idea that it's going to go to the owner, that's whoever you're leasing or renting from. I like that idea. I think that's going to help out. And then on the back for the penalty would only be on the current bill, not a reoccurring penalty for past due amounts. I kind of question that. And then effective January 1st, 2021, they'd like to mail the bills only to the property owner. Like I said just earlier, I'm glad that we're doing that now. We might get a better handle on this. But I'm just wondering, there's going to be cases where I don't want to shut somebody's water off and have an 80, 85-year-old. Could be a homeowner that's on just SS. And maybe it's not that big of a number. I have no way of looking at this or researching it, but maybe if we could be mindful or think about that process, come up with some ideas. That's all I'm asking. I don't want to be the first or last call if something happens if someone's water's out, from their house. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Additional questions for the city manager?
Mr. Chairman? Oh, go ahead. Someone, go ahead.
Commissioner Twine.
Yes, I just wanted to extend my thanks and appreciation to Chief Wilcox for his service to the city of Sandusky for the past 3 years. I truly appreciate what I've learned from him. I'll get a chance to talk with him before his last day, but I just wanted to publicly state I appreciate his service to the city. I've learned a lot from him, and I certainly wish him well in his future endeavors.
Thank you. Commissioner Poole?
Yeah, with regard to the water bills, apparently we have 767 accounts on the shut-off list, which I assume that means those are all that are past due. And to determine whether or not I'm satisfied with your new plan. Thank you for putting together a new plan. But if you would, we could use, if you go back to January, provide us with some data, a graph that tracks by month the growth of that list of delinquent accounts in numbers and how much money. And then let's say about November, we'll see what happens from this point going forward, where we've raised it to $150 for the shutoffs and whatever other things that you do to collect the money, and we'll find out what works, what doesn't work. That's what I would appreciate seeing by the, say about November, just where we've been and what we've gained. Additionally, I would ask right now, do I think I know the answer to the question. In terms of the current delinquent accounts, do you know why they're delinquent? Has there been any kind of data gathered that we know individually what the circumstances are? I ask that question because I recognize that for the last several months, people who I don't know by name, obviously, are receiving an extra $600 a week in addition to unemployment. So for us to have this many people who aren't paying the water bill, I'd just like a little insight into who these folks are and what the problem is in some numbers that we can work with so we can devise a plan that will actually target what the problem is, because everybody in Sandusky is not 85 years old and having a problem because of COVID. And to do a responsible policy, we need to have some concept of what the problem actually is so we can help these folks. So question is, can you do that?
Michelle, I don't know if you want to speak directly to that, but we can certainly pull together data from the past. My understanding is that this is actually a legacy that has been built up over a period of a number of years, and that Michelle caught it quickly. It's not something that was brought to my attention before that, and ultimately saw that these numbers were out of whack with what she had seen in Norwalk, and has been working pretty diligently, and we've been keeping the commission up to date as we've gone forward to try to get it under control. But Michelle, please feel free to add to that, and we can go from there.
Sure. Through you, Commission President, to Commissioner Poole, what we've seen is we've never really given anybody an incentive to pay here. You know, there's no penalty when they don't pay, and that can roll over for a couple months before they hit that $100 threshold. And at that time, they'd get a shut-off notice, and that would be their only incentive to pay, would be, you know, to avoid the disconnection of service. So with the COVID-19 pandemic, we also were faced with, we were not allowed to do shutoffs for since the end of March. So obviously our customers know that, and they're just waiting for us to get back on track and be able to do shutoffs. So the EPA has lifted that mandate. We want to get back in and start doing shutoffs, and we will definitely keep track of this, and I will definitely be monitoring this as we go to see how we're doing. As far as collecting personal data, I really don't know a way to do that. I can just have the employees and customer accounting kind of make notes of, you know, where people are falling, if they're saying that they're out of work. If they are out of work, I do recognize that there is extra funding that they're getting from unemployment at the moment. And we'll try to get these balances caught up. To Mr. Waddington's comment about, you know, working with people, and that is our goal. You know, if we have somebody, an elderly citizen that's on a fixed income, we will work with these people to make sure we don't have a disconnection of service. You know, that's our last resort. We just need to make sure that people are working with us and they're doing what they're saying and promising that they will do to get these balances under control. So we're doing everything we can. We'll keep monitoring it, and you know, we'll report back later in November when we're going to get that threshold back to that $100 limit to see where we're at and see if we're, you know, more on track with people keeping up with their balances.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Poole.
maybe I can help with this concept here. Of the 767 accounts that are on your shut-off list or delinquent, how many of those folks have actually contacted you to talk about why they haven't paid? You've indicated that you don't contact them, so how many have contacted you?
Through you, Commission President, to Commissioner Poole, I can say that the only calls they're getting right now down in customer accounting is they just want to know, when are we resuming shutoffs? We have people that our balances are $7,000 and they know it's coming, and they're just waiting for us to resume shutoffs before they're going to pay. So I don't know, in those cases, it's not an inability to pay, it's just they're not wanting to until they have to give up their money.
Okay, thank you for that. I would suggest that if the issue is that people actually have money to pay and they are not paying, that raising the shut-off rate to $150 from $100 seems counterproductive. I mean, the staff has represented what they'd like us to do, and I'm prepared, since you're responsible to collect the money, I'm comfortable allowing you another couple of months to do it as you wish. But let me suggest that if what you just stated is true about what you believe is the reason people aren't paying, is that we're simply not making them pay, I'm perplexed at the recommendation that you've made to raise the threshold. Thank you. I won't ask any more. I'll get with you in your office about needing more data, because it sounds like we're just guessing about things, to be honest. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Reader. Or Ms.
This is
Twine,
Naomi.
excuse me, Ms. Twine.
I guess I'm a little concerned about requiring our finance department, water department, gathering personal information from people about, names and their situation. And it's also, I don't believe, expedient for them to have to call everyone to find out what's going on. I do believe, as Mr. Waddington mentioned, if there are people in difficult situations and all, they should be reaching out to the water department, asking for some type of assistance, or if there's some type of community social service network that can assist people with their utilities. Again, I don't know that we should be in the business of calling people, asking them, what the problem is. And yes, there are certain situations where people are in very, very difficult situations and are having trouble paying their utilities, but I believe the onus needs to be on those people to do some outreach to us as the collectors of their water and sewer bills, but also us being able to provide some type of assistance or working with people that are in dire straits. Yes, the data is good, but again, I'm not so comfortable with us doing calls or receiving information that is not freely given by our customers.
Mr. Chairman, I agree.
Commissioner Floyd,
I agree.
you've spoken on this issue several times. I'm going to ask other commissioners if they would like to speak on the issue.
Mr. Chairman,
Please do.
Commissioner Meiser.
I know Dave's got a big heart. He's been worried about this a long time. I think as the water distribution is a business, it should be run like a business. And I do feel for those that are in need, but I think they need to be directed at maybe Catholic Charities or serving our seniors or some other social network that will help them out through whatever mess they're in. $7,000 is ridiculous. I would shut that off today, regardless of any COVID mandate. So I think we have to let the water distribution and Ms. Reader run this thing like a business. And being a firefighter, I'm very compassionate and have empathy, and I will help anybody out and send them in the right direction. But if that kind of thing's going on, it's got to stop. Thank you, Mr. President.
Ms. Reader, I believe that that department is yours to run, and it is certainly within your realm of setting this policy, and I'm willing to allow you to set that policy, change the policy. If you'll just communicate back to us that's the effectiveness over a specified period of time, that will be good for me also. I am not going to get into the business of telling you how to set that policy or when to send bills out or how to do your collections. That is your responsibility, and I don't believe that it's just the Commission's responsibility to be tampering with that policy. I appreciate your efforts on it, and I appreciate the fact that you are making an effort to dig into this these past due bills. I agree with Commissioner Meinzer. Some of these people are certainly gaming the system right now, and we should be as proactive as we can against those, and we should be compassionate against the people that that are struggling. So I'm counting on you to find a middle ground with your policy.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Murray.
I would like to add my appreciation for Ms. Reader digging into this issue. The fact that this did not come to the city manager's attention or the commissioner's attention for some extended period of time, I think is a testament to how hard she has been working to dig into the city finances and make sure that we are accounting for our and our revenue. So thank you for digging in and for bringing to us what I think is a thoughtful and well-considered proposal.
Additional discussion, Commissioner. No additional questions for the city manager? Next item on our agenda are items of old business. Commissioner Waddington, I wonder if you can give us just a brief update on your effort to establish a permanent location for the plaques for your for our Hall of Fame for city volunteers.
Okay. Well, I met with you a few days ago and our new clerk, Mackenzie Spriggs. We walked over to Washington Park. I think we've got a pretty nice site there. And then we've also, through discussions, and I've had some calls and emails and folks stopping me that I forgot one other prominent person. So between our discussion, we have Mrs. Jackie Collins, Mr. Jim Corso, who are both deceased or passed away. And then one other one that was brought to my attention after a couple calls, I thought, how did I ever miss or not think about him, was Chuck Lococo from St. Mary's. And he's done stuff for probably 40, 45 years at least, helping out in the community and with the all the sports programs and stuff with there. So I'm glad that we got him. I'm hoping that after this, whenever we get this down, that we can, at some point with this COVID, this is a crazy world right now, that we could at least present plaques as a commission and the group that whoever decides that wants to be on this. We got a process now that we're going through. But for following years, have at least one, maybe two commissioners and have some public residents involved in it too. Because I'm certain there's people out there we haven't even thought of. But I think we got a great first list. Now I'll let you kind of chime in on what.
Thank you, Commissioner Waddington, for spearheading this effort. I had an opportunity to speak. I know you spoke to the Collins family and have spoken to the Corso family. I had an opportunity to speak to Mr. Lococo this afternoon, and he was both stunned and thrilled with the opportunity to be recognized. As I've said many times in the past, this city runs on the backs of hundreds of volunteers, and without them, we would not be the beautiful city that we are. Whether it's park involvement or youth involvement or infrastructure involvement, volunteers show up at the most opportune times, and this is just a way to thank them for their efforts. Additional items of old business. Items of new business. Ms. Springs has advised me that our 4 charter changes voted on at the last meeting have been submitted to the Board of Elections to be placed on the November ballot. So that is in place. So we will go forward from there. I'd like to, under new business, I would also like to mention or make a brief, maybe a public announcement that this city is not doing so well with our census. And the ramifications of a poor census turnout will pile on the dire monetary situation that our city finds ourselves in under COVID. So anything that any of you can do out there, both the commissioners and the general public, to encourage your friends or relatives or cousins, whoever lives in this city, it is painless to fill out if they would browbeat them into doing it, because it accounts for literally hundreds of thousands of dollars to this community if we are to fall below the $25,000 mark. And we are woefully short of a good turnout. I think it's 57, 58% is where the city is at right now.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I have a call into Chris Zess. He's the partnership specialist for U.S. Census. Mr. Murray was around in 2010. We had Marcy Captor here. We had a big rally at Sandusky High School in the gym. I think we had a couple hundred people there. And back then we reached out, different small groups reached out to the churches. we did some door-to-door. That's probably nearly impossible now, but I just wish there was a way. I've been racking my brains out. I know they gave us a little extension on this, but I don't think at that time, Mr. Murray, Commissioner Murray, didn't we end up like 25,600, 700, just over 25,000 if I recall right, at 2010, and that was with a big effort.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may, that is my recollection. It was just over that critical line for us, and if we drop below that, it's my understanding that we will lose some funding. And by the way, there was originally an extension of the deadline for the census being completed, but that was rolled back now, and that was cut off. So I think it's now the end of September. And that's it. And of course, we had an employee who was able to work to encourage the people completing the census, but because of the cutbacks, we had to terminate or eliminate that position.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Waddington.
Maybe Mr. Murray can help me on this. At that time, I guess what drove me, I know that was 10 years ago, or got me a little excited, was the 25,000 mark, and I believe that still remains the same or true to today. And if it comes in 24,900, then we fall off into the little guy's world, and it's CDBG money, grant money. There's a lot of stuff, Fed money, and possibly even state with the cutbacks now and the extensions that they're trying to help all the communities out. That could cripple us next year. And I just wish I could come up with the magic bullet to push this forward to get people to respond, but it's just so hard. It's like the majority of the communities, I don't want to say they're hiding out, but everybody's staying in their own little bubble, I guess, personal bubble. They go to the store, go home. I see folks driving now with masks on. It's a different climate. I just wish there was some way. If anybody's got any ideas, please get hold of Chris S. Because it just seems real quiet, and that scares me. When it's real quiet, I'm concerned. And Mr. Murray, could you add on what all, I guess, beyond CDBG and Fed money and that, what else that does as far as like maybe MPO money, road money and stuff down the road, even with that gasoline tax that passed, and we could still lose a lot.
Mr. Chairman, if I may respond to Mr. Waddington's question, Mr. Klein may have a better idea, but I believe it's all those things plus transit. And I think we could get into a different pool, and we don't have as you put it succinctly, we're not one of the big boys anymore. We fall into a pot of all others, and that really hurts our city. And I don't know the answer, Mr. Waddington. I wish we could go door to door. We really can't responsibly do that right now, and I don't think, it's always been tough. It's been getting tougher and tougher over the last 20 years to get people to even come to the door. So I'm not sure that's effective right now. A lot of the folks that we're trying to reach aren't watching tonight. A lot of the folks that we're trying to reach aren't getting the register. So I don't know how we reach out to these folks. I wish I knew. I don't.
Well, this COVID thing kind of limits our ability to gather, to have a large gathering, or some type of an outing where you would draw people in and then have volunteers sign them up. Even that is risking life and limb. So we need to think out of the box, and other cities are doing it. I mean, I see Lorraine is like at 70%. We are woefully short of a good number right now. So I'll ask for some help, perhaps from the register on this also. Maybe just pounding that home through media, whether it's WLAC and the register, might be our only avenues to try to wake our citizenry up on how important this really is. To be continued, so to speak. Additional items of new business, Commissioners. I'm not getting much out of the rest of you, so I feel like I'm doing most of the talking, but I do want to acknowledge the fact that on my drive into work this morning, there was a wonderful field of Maria's Field of Hope, as the sunflowers now, the city flower is bloomed magnificently there on Causeway Drive. There'd been a story in both the Register and I think in the Lorraine Journal regarding that, and I would encourage any of you that haven't been there, and if you have been there, return there. Once you visit there, you will find that it will change your life. The pictures of those young children and the money that program has raised is unbelievable, and we have it right here in our own backyard, thanks to both the donation of Cedar Fair for that large field and the ability to bring Maria's Field of Hope from Avon to Sandusky. There is not a person that visits this city via Cedar Fair that does not see that, and I think ultimately understands what that's about. So I encourage you all to stop and visit and buy a T-shirt or coffee cup or make some kind of a donation also. Additional items and new business. If not, I will, Ms. Spriggs, I think you may have audience, letters from audience.
We have 3 people that wrote in this evening. The first is from Mr. Tim Schwanger. He asks, will the vacancy in the police department created by the retirement of Officer Rankin be filled? The second is from Mr. Thomas Lamarca. He said, I previously asked about the rental contact information and rates to be charged for the use of the city-owned Mylander Pavilion. I interact with numerous people throughout the week looking for information. It would seem to be a no-brainer to put the contact information on the doors, windows, and paint or stencil. The city is losing much-needed income from this facility. I understand that COVID-19 could reduce the occupancy numbers. However, let the renters beware. Finally, Ms. Sharon Johnson said, at the last commission meeting, Mr. Justin Harris was directed by the vice president to get back to me about whether or not the city manager can legally approve contracts for the under $10,000 expenditure limit. Mr. Harris has not yet gotten back to me.
Mr. Whoopser, are you in a position to answer the question regarding Officer Rankin?
Through the commission president to the commission and community, we are looking at every vacancy to see if it can be filled, and have had some conversations through Chief Warzak, the police department, about how we can begin to fill some of those vacancies. We know we're down a few officers now, and they've worked hard to make that work. But we know with impending retirements coming up, at some point we are going to have to fill positions. So we hope to be back soon with news that we'll be able to fill some of those, but we also have to be very cautious as each month's financial report looks a little more grim than the last, and there will be some attrition in each department. But we will do what we can, and my guess is we're approaching that time where certainly a police vacancy will have to be filled. But those are weekly conversations that I'm having with Chief Warzak and Director Reeder, and hopefully we'll have more information on what's possible there very soon.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. It appears the question regarding the rates on the pavilion is probably a softball. At least it seems like a softball. If we have those rates, can Parks and Rec post them on a door or on a wall somewhere? Is that possible, Mr. Webster?
Through the commission president, yes, and I believe that's what we began to share tonight in the manager's report. So if Jason or Mackenzie, who I know has worked closely on that before she shifted from the clerk role, want to post those on the website, we're happy to do that, and obviously really look forward to marketing that facility just as soon as we're able and it is safe.
And Mr. Harris, I'll let you reach out to Ms. Johnson regarding the city manager's authority to spend $10,000. That seems to be a question for the law department.
And I apologize to Ms. Johnson for not getting back to her. I do miss her keeping me on my toes.
It's starting already. Great, thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, commissioners.
So moved.
Second.
Second.